So I was pleasantly surprised at how good 2.5 Dimensional Seduction's quality was, and I decided it is time to do another episode of Anime Manga Overviews. If you're new to the channel and are wondering what this series is about, it's essentially me talking about a show and my thoughts and feelings on it, in an unscripted and casual manner, and it is not going to be as in-depth as my other videos usually are. So that's probably going to be why this video is going to be a mess as I kind of just ramble on, as I have some things noted here that I want to talk about. So without further ado, let's just, I guess, jump right into it. The main thing, I guess, when you get into the show, potentially may be the comparison between this and My Dress Up Darling, as both of them do go over certain similar themes, especially with the cosplay aspect. There's a bit of romance there. In my opinion, I prefer this series in general over this, but I do think Dress Up Darling excels better at the romantic aspect of the main leads, while I do think the show handles the cosplay and otaku nature much better. I do like what this series offers in terms of romantic discussion, as we've seen in the last few episodes, but we'll get to that later in the video. But I'm not really a big fan of the actual romance in the series between the main two leads in the second season, as it has actually been announced. I really love the theme of passion and how it's differently explored here, as opposed to other shows like Dress Up Darling, as I've explained in my overview for that series if you haven't seen that. I really also like the cosplay focus, seeing the world of otaku nature in this setting, seeing how we have the heavenly queens, the different characters such as Nonoa and how she's like, and we're gonna get at all these characters and discuss them and what makes me really love this story so much. And I think the most prominent thing about this series is how a lot of these characters are dealing with ridicule over their passions and works. And we can see this most prominently with their teacher, Mayuri, as the basis of her character is built around the conflict of ditching her passion as an adult just so she could be able to fit in society with her accepted profession. And I feel like that has to be really relatable, as I'm pretty sure there's gonna be a lot of people, as they may have to ditch their hobbies, whether it be anime, gaming, and all these things, just so they would be able to pursue a career that society would accept. And it is a very interesting take on a character here, honestly. It's not something I see often of stories in this medium, and you see how it really affects Mayuri as she constantly wonders what is the point of spending so much time on these embarrassing passions. And you see that Ririsa and Okamura try their hardest to convince her of how important it is to not go against their beliefs and passion, and that's why they don't want to submit the report on the different activities they did for children, all the things alike, because they cannot accept the fact that they go against their passion and hide certain aspects of that cosplay. Because passion is something that you're supposed to have define you, and you're supposed to try to have courage to show it to everybody, even if you're embarrassed, as Ririsa is a representation of everything the show's about. And we'll talk about her in a bit later, because Mayuri just thinks that it's probably better to hide explicit things so they don't get looked down upon, whether or not that's the right or wrong way. And again, I just really love this aspect because it just really speaks to a lot of things just in general. I mean, I'm sure you've had things that you've enjoyed and wondering if you don't want to talk about a certain aspect of it because you think that you may be judged. And I really do think this also ties back to a lot of the themes in the story, whether it be Nonoa, whether it be the mangaka arc, or Okamura and his arc. There's a lot of things in here as well. But the thing is, it isn't roses and sunshines. Just because you're gonna take your passion seriously, just because you're gonna try to, show everybody what your passion is, even if it's explicit, even if it's something that people may find shameful, it doesn't mean that, everybody will accept you. There's gonna be people that will look down on you, even if you took your passion seriously. And I really like how Mayuri's character goes here, as she, after this arc, takes a more supportive role towards most of the cast. We see how she helps Okamura with his struggles on how he feels about the girls. We also see her help with her knowledge of cosplay, being sort of the advisor for the club, as we see her ensure that they're not overworking themselves, which is something that Ririka kinda does. And I really love that she tackles a controversial topic, and one of my favorite things of the series, I guess you could say it's a small moment, but I think it goes a long way, is seeing how the principal treats this entire ordeal. It is treated in a really realistic fashion, because most stories would likely have this be the end of that whole obstacle or issue, where potentially they'd be able to show their cosplays to everybody. The class will be happy and they're all happy and everybody lives happily ever after. But no, that doesn't happen because the principal is aware that they cannot show these explicit things, and it's not because it's shameful. If they actually decide to have that public, there's a chance that they may be ridiculed online, potentially students bullying them, and there's a lot of negative connotations that can come out of it. They need to take account for that, even if students may not like them for it, because that's exactly what an adult is like, and they have that experience and they must use that experience to help these children and protect them. And that's exactly what principal does and what Mari decides to go with, and I think that's just an amazing moment and really just shows how much the story cares about its topics and what it's going with. And speaking of the passion and just overall pursuing like hobbies in general, I think Ririsa Amo does actually encompass that pretty well. She might not be a character I like a lot that much, but she is essentially the heart of the show, and while her romance with Okamura is not the best, I do think the last few episodes make up for it, as it shows a good, interesting way of how Ririsa views love and how she sees Okamura. But I think my favorite part about Ririsa is especially her argument with Nagomi and how it adds a interesting trait of Ririsa and her conflict regarding cosplay, and it's whether or not she needs a reason to keep doing something you love. Because Ririsa, for the longest, has just been doing cosplay because she likes it. Now you get to see a character who does cosplay as a career, and the fact that she loves cosplay because it's cosplay and not because it's a character, because Ririsa cosplays because she loves Lillian and wants to show everybody that she loves that character. But now you have that question if whether or not just loving that something is all it takes to do that type of thing. Do you need a sort of justified reason to want to help somebody? Do you need some grandiose reason? Well, the story's reply to that is that it wants to ensure that maybe that reason does exist, but nobody has found it, because there are so many reasons someone would want to do something. You could see that Mayuri decides to show Ririsa that, especially telling her that there are various reasons that you may want to cosplay, but she just does it because it's fun. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. And you see that Ririsa herself is aware of this, and the fact that nobody has found that reason is completely fine, and many people's paths that they take will likely lead them to their own answer. Because the story does remind you time and time again, there's no right or wrong with this kind of thing. And especially the fact that, as I discussed a few minutes ago, Ririsa does have a tendency to do things on her own and affect the people around her, and it does also give a great moment to a character, which we'll get into once we're done with this part. And I really like the fact that Ririsa views love as all the same when it comes to characters from a manga or a real person, all that, because to her, all of it's the same, or else Okamura's love isn't real, and it's just perfect, because that's essentially what the story is trying to say, that all these passions and hobbies, you know, they're all genuine, they're all real, and they all define you. And whether or not you try to hide it and try to pretend that part of it isn't real, would kind of be going against that passion itself. Well, I don't think Mikari is terrible, as I think she's decent. I really wish that her character did not revolve completely on Okamura. I mean, her getting into show business was because of Okamura. Most of her scenes always rely on Okamura and how much she loves him. And I think there are some cool aspects of her, especially at the end where she realizes that she wants to have a friend to confide in with her feelings and thoughts on Okamura and her love. I really do wish that Mikari was not just completely reliant on Okamura. I don't have much to say on her, but yeah, that is basically what it is with her. And speaking of Nagomi, as we just talked about, I really do like how she explores a different side of the passion theme, which is turning a passion into profession, and how that can affect your enjoyment of it especially. And seeing how a hobby versus a career can change things. As now she's a pro, she cannot freely do the things that she wants. She has to make sure that certain things are in check with her team, and she has to cosplay certain characters that she may not know. But what I think is really interesting about Nagomi is she loves cosplay as a whole and not the characters themselves. She just loves the entire nature of cosplay, and she is accepting of any cosplayer, whether it be a low effort one or ones that are from a budget house, anything like that. She will accept them like for who they are. And there's an interesting connection between her and Mayuri, as Mayuri just sees cosplay about the character just like Ririsa as opposed to Nagomi, and it's the question of whether or not you need to love the character to cosplay them, because Nagomi just cosplays characters that she has no idea who they are, because it's her job. She has to cosplay these characters to promote her career. But now it's the question of, does that really make her a fan of cosplay if she's just cosplaying some characters because she has to, or cosplaying characters that she doesn't even know about? And it really is kind of painful for Nagomi because you see how popular Mayuri is, and she doesn't really do it out of a profession, as Mayuri is just doing it as a hobby, compared to Nagomi, who has all this hardship and putting her all into loving something. And the important thing about Nagomi is that she doesn't cosplay to do a character. She cosplays because she decided it. It's her decision. I mean, it goes back to Ririsa, as she did start cosplaying because she wants to show people that she loves Liliel. It's not saying that Ririsa does not want to cosplay for herself, but I do definitely think that a big portion of it was because she wants to show that people that she loves Liliel. She does say that multiple times. But Nagomi wants to cosplay because she wants to cosplay. It's nothing about whichever character. She's not shackled to a certain manga character. She is in love with Kai from that one dating sim whatever she played, but that's not really the reason I guess she started cosplaying. I mean, to be fair, it is because she wanted to look prettier so that she would be accepted by Kai-sama, but you get the idea. She lies about loving herself and loving other cosplayers, because if that was the case, she wouldn't hate Ririsa. Ririsa is a manifestation of what every cosplayer wants to be, simply enjoying what they're cosplaying as without having to worry about all the other outside effects. She sees that Ririsa is having the time of her life doing this, while Nagomi has not really had a chance to smile or enjoy cosplay in a while. Being cute was enough to her, and it didn't really matter if she were at the top. But with online comments, all this mockery that she has received, it really, I guess, caused her to be obsessed with being number one, so that she wouldn't be affected by these comments. And I think that aspect is also great, because it's such a small realization to her that when she's terrified at the end of this arc, thinking that people are about to ridicule her when she's in the changing room, she starts to realize that people have never really ridiculed her in real life. It's just these random comments of these people that have never seen her and are just doing this in their own house. And that moment, I think, can go a long way for a bunch of people, just in general, not even related to past or anything. I really like these small moments, because just all these small moments go a long way to make the story a lot better. Like what I'm talking about with the principal scene, you have this scene. They do matter. I do think these kind of scenes do add a lot. They really help a lot to the story in general. And Nagomi has an interesting thing when it comes to friendships, which we'll talk about with Nonoa right now. And it's the fact that she tells Ririsa that she doesn't have to befriend Nonoa if she isn't fond of her. You don't have to like somebody, because even if you're trying to make everybody like you, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. And this does also show Nagomi's growth. This is kind of my interpretation, but as we just said, she has been affected by those online comments and tried her hardest to be at the top spot, likely out of a desire to get rid of that hate, potentially just to be validated by those people. Now she realizes that those hate comments don't really matter, and there are going to be people who always may not like you, because every person is entitled to their own opinion. And she finds the joy of cosplaying through Ririsa, and I think that's just perfect. Everything ties back to Ririsa, as she changes people in many different ways. Now with Nonoa, while Nonoa's character arc does focus on breaking the wall that the others have put for her, her character is essential to add another layer to passion, and that's the fact that she was ridiculed to the point where she didn't want to talk about her passion at all. She is not introverted, really, as we see later on, because she constantly does talk a lot to her friends, gushing about her favorite things. I'm sure there's a lot of people that would love to just go and end on the things they love, but they're just terrified that people may not care or listen or find them annoying, and that's exactly what Nonoa has went through. She loved to talk about manga and anime and draw. It was initially fine, because in elementary school, everybody liked the otaku stuff. While she was drawing these arts, everybody else was doing something else, and she basically got isolated. She was alone and tried to befriend others and just gush about certain things until they just told her that she never listened to them. It just hits. And especially, I really like her comedic moments with Ririsa. It's a ton of fun seeing just how exaggerated and crazy it can be, as she literally cannot really speak and is giving Ririsa the wrong idea that she hates her and whatnot. And I like that Nonoa is aware that she was also technically in the wrong for basically just yapping away to the girls in her flashback, and not just the fact that the girl was wrong. And, again, these small moments that help a lot, because, yes, she did technically just constantly talk without listening to them, but it doesn't mean that the girl was right to say that and basically destroy Nonoa's entire will to speak. And I really like the journey of seeing how she befriends others. I mean, Arya and Ririsa, especially Arya, that's a completely big hurdle for her, especially how Arya is a complete opposite of Nonoa, this extroverted, gyaru, energetic girl that is trying her hardest to just basically be one of her closest friends. And the best moment that Nonoa gets to encapsulate the entire journey that she gets throughout the series is her moment when she lashes out at Ririsa, burdening herself with everything, and is finally Nonoa just showing her entire feelings and emotions to somebody that she deems a friend, as Ririsa is her first friend in a long while, and she's finally able to give her honest and raw thoughts to her, and wants to just help her because she is her special friend. And I think that's just awesome. It really works to just get everything and tie it together and make a great conclusion to Nonoa's arc. And at the end of the day, change is key, and Nonoa herself realized that, and I do really like the conflict that she has in her inner thoughts, realizing that all these thoughts of herself, these negative thoughts, thinking that she would never befriend anybody, that she would never get any friends, she will always be alone, she shouldn't speak, they're all lies to protect herself from any dangers alike because of everything she's went through in her life. I think the arc that made me just think this is going to be a favorite of mine has to be the Manga arc, or Arya's dad arc. This arc explores another side of what Nagomi's character was going for, which is how passion into profession can destroy somebody completely. And Arya's dad is a manifestation of what happens when one is unable to fight the ridicules of passion. Most of these characters have overcome the ridicules of passion. We see this in Ririsa, as we have some tidbits in the last few episodes where others have ridiculed her for her cosplay. We see this in Mayuri, she was able to overcome that nature. We also see this in Nonoa, you see this in Nagomi, and so on, the list goes on. But with Arya's side, it's millions of people trashing on a passion project he had, which was a Valkyrie battle, and what makes it worse that it essentially became nothing but a tool for money due to the financial situations for the family, and that just destroyed everything. Because imagine you making your passion project, your magnum opus, and you submit it to the world to see, and it just becomes nothing but a laughing stock. It just destroys you, because no matter what you might say, it's just a terrifying thing. But what I love about this arc is that it explores just how important it is to have even one person enjoy that thing. And I even think it can apply to YouTube here, or story making and everything, I'm sure there's people out there, it's definitely difficult. Let's say you have a YouTube channel and you've made like 10 videos and you don't really have many views. And there's that one person that is constantly following your channel, constantly commenting and showing support. I think that is something that would be encouraging to so many people, even if most people probably aren't watching those videos, or even if there's a lot of people that don't like those videos. And I think this arc does explore this perfectly. You see this even in the family situation with the mother, how much your views may change over time. You'll never be able to change how you viewed them at that time specifically. Because the fact is, she may have divorced him, but she knows that she was happy back then and realizes that if she stayed, she would be breaking the dad even more. He was essentially a broken man whose passion was the only thing that kept him going. As you can see throughout those years, he kept just doing the side story. Even if a lot of people hated Valkyrie Battle, there was one person who loved it and sent him that letter, and it saved the dad. He kept going, even he realized that there was that one person out of millions that liked his series. He tells a young Okamura to not mention his series to others because he may get bullied for it, and it cannot be a good series if everyone hates it. He's just blinded by all this hate and is unable to see the most important people that love his work, because his wife loved it, his daughter loved it, and just burst out at his daughter telling her why the hell she's bothering with this work. It's garbage, nobody likes it, why should she bother with it? And he just wants to forget about it permanently. He doesn't want to ever remember it because it destroyed his life a lot. And this arc extends into what makes me like Okamura a lot here. Initially, I wasn't a huge fan of him. I mean, he was fun at the beginning with his over-the-top personality and how he's like. But his scene to the dad is easily the reason why I like him a lot. As you see how he just screams at the dad telling him it doesn't mean anything if he thinks that it's garbage, because that series saved Okamura's life, which is the death of the author to him. Because to Okamura, when the artist finishes his work, he can no longer tell people how to feel about it, because that works down on its own. Because you can't tell somebody how to feel about something. So no matter what the dad may think of the series, Okamura will always just think it's amazing, because that's how he feels about it. And it's a great scene to encompass what passion and emotion really are all about. And with Okamura as a character, he sort of gets to a more supportive role for most of the series. He's cool, but you don't really get to see a lot of him. But he does have key great scenes. I really like a detail of him where he's not really pushy or weird with the girls. He meshes well and he's respectful. You see that a lot. Where he kind of just exits the room when they're changing. It's not really some sort of, fan servicey scenes with them. We do get that earlier in the series with Mikari as she tries to push herself onto him. But I really love scenes of him supporting Ririsa and her passions, as well as when she's feeling down. I mean, you see that scene where she's crying on how to approach cosplay, being lost, and being unsure of how she should feel. And Okamura is angry at the fact because of this, because he tells her she should just embrace her feelings. These scenes really show how Okamura is the embodiment of just accepting oneself and emotion, because we see this in Nonoa and Ririsa. He accepts Nonoa for who she is and waits for as long as she needs to until she's able to speak and tell him how she feels. And Okamura knows that he's an otaku and he should not judge others based on what they like, and tells that exact same thing to Ririsa. It doesn't matter how people feel about her cosplay. It doesn't matter whether or not she have a reason for cosplay. It doesn't matter if Nagomi thinks that Ririsa is not that good of a cosplayer. It's just genuinely a very surprising take on a character that is like Okamura, and I really do appreciate that. We really also got to talk about how his distaste of women was actually explored. It was not just a simple gag. It was essentially because his mother left him for another man, and that instilled betrayal. His otaku tendencies are essentially a wall to save himself from judgments and betrayal, and kind of just has a negative connotation of himself, and even downplays his own circumstances. Throughout the series, you never see him ever try to realize that there are people around him that like him. And I do like that they actually make the dense aspect of Okamura sort of make sense. I mean, he's had Mikari being in love with him for like years, and now with this context in mind, it does make sense why he hasn't ever seen it, because he has such a negative view of himself that he's probably never going to notice it until this entire arc. And we've seen throughout the series that everybody around him has developed him in some shape or form or saved him. I mean, look at Ririsa and how her existence has changed him slowly from that, early on bits of Okamura, and how he was very against having her around because she's a 3D woman and he wants to be with Lillian and whatnot. And his little moments of trying to take better pictures really also do go further with this entire topic, as he tries to learn to see people for they are. That's how he does the picture. That's how he gets better pictures of Mikari, because he took a picture of her in that cosplay where it also can be seen as Mikari rather than just that character itself. Same thing with Liliel, as he tries to see the Ririsa inside that Liliel cosplay, which is why the series is called 2.5D, because you can be able to mix between Ririsa and Liliel for it to go be out there and not just be a caricature of a cosplay and whatnot, if that makes sense. Now, with the last episode, especially with the romance aspect, as once Mikari talks about her feelings to Ririsa, Okamura overhears it alongside the teacher, and we get a really interesting take on romance. Manga talks about, let's say, how idolized relationships can be with people that are obsessed with finding the one person that they're destined with and whatnot. Essentially is how it's seen in romance mangas, of how the couple are always in love with each other, they're destined to be together and all that. But that is not how it works in real life, as to my read, there is nothing wrong in dating somebody if you don't like them yet, with the intention of giving them a chance if you're interested. As it happens a lot where, you might be interested in somebody, but the other party may not be as interested, but they can give them a chance and see how things go. There's many different ways with it, as maybe getting asked out could give you a different perspective of that person, changing maybe your view on them and how you see them. And it goes back to one of the main things of the series that it tries to say, that there's not really a right or wrong answer to this. There's a lot of layers to a lot of topics. And this arc does actually add a lot of depth to Okamura and highlight that this story is not some wish fulfillment, as in the beginning, it did come off this way, as he had a bunch of these girls flock to him, But over time now, and point of this final few episodes is telling Okamura that he has to get out of this illusion that he's put for himself and try to live in reality and try to realize that he is a character in his own world as well. But I really like the story is not trying to say that he should stop being an otaku and just do something else and stop being immersed in this world. No, it's just trying to tell him that he needs to look at the real world and see that there's people that care for him, and it makes him realize why he loved the moments of those girls looking at him. It does encapsulate it, and even at the end, we see that in order for him to make these relationships work, after all, he must accept help from others to make these relationships work. And it does really remind me of Gojo, as even in that series, one of the key factors of Gojo is trying to tell him that he must rely on people, and there's nothing wrong with getting help from people. He doesn't have to do everything on his own. Overall, I'm really surprised at this series. If I had to give it a rating, I'm probably giving it like a 9.5. I really wish I could make a main video on this. Potentially we can do that when season 2 comes out. But yeah, I really do love this series, and I think it's just gonna become one of my favorites in general now. If you've been enjoying the video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. We're trying to hit the 1K subscriber mark soon. Be on the lookout, I suppose, as we're dropping an anime of the season, as this season I just concluded. So yeah, we'll be talking about that soon, and I'll be catching you in the next one.